This will be the Monday, July 9th meeting of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Roswell. I'd like to invite Alex Leach to come forward and lead us in the pledge. If we'd all stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alex, if you'll come to the microphone. Alex has fulfilled all of his requirements for Eagle Scout other than citizenship in the community.
Yes, sir.
And we usually get these guys much earlier on, but he's a seasoned veteran. What was your service project for Eagle Scout?
My service project, I built a fire pit and benches at St. Andrew Catholic Church on Riverside.
Wow, that's wonderful. Good job.
Thank you.
And congratulations. I am confident you will finish up the requirements with this meeting and sail on into history as an Eagle Scout and join a great group of people. Congratulations, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more hand for Alex. Good job. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Price, second by Councilmember Wynn.
No, sir.
Who seconded? Councilmember DeFilippo. I want to make sure credit is credit due. But real quickly, I want to bring up some of the things that we're approving because there are a lot of great events this summer, which I want you to come to. We have Ms. Mary's Ice Cream Cranking on Sunday, August 26th, which is always a great event. I hope to make it this year. We have, maybe 200 or 300 different flavors of ice cream.
I tasted just about every single
And you can taste them all, and if you're a taster, you can taste more than you want to. So it's a great event to support the Drake House. We have the Dyslexia Dash on Saturday, October 20th. We have the Big Pumpkin 5K, which is World Harvest is sponsoring that. We have the Judson Collegiate Invitational. Becky, Wynn, you want to tell them about that?
Yes, sir. This is going to be July 15th through the 18th, and it's going to be the Legends of Golf. It's going to be there Sunday and Monday, and the Legends of Golf is Nancy Lopez, Rosie Jones, and those type of people are going to be playing with some of our collegiate players, and it's a 4-day event, and you can get tickets online. Thank you.
Who can tell me about the Holcomb Bridge Hustle on Saturday, November 17th? We're approving it. It must be a run. It's a 5K. So we've got lots of events coming up. It's wonderful to have all of these events in Roswell, and although we can't make them all, we can fantasize about getting all these events and fantasizing about running and staying in shape. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes No,
sir, I have to abstain on this one because of that.
All right.
Collegiate.
Councilmember Wynn is abstaining. It passes with my vote of 3. Councilmember Diamond and Councilmember Orleans are absent with an excuse. And with that, we will call our regular agenda. And Janet Russell, here's the way the consent agenda works. We do not have to read all the items from the consent agenda. If you have questions about the items on the consent agenda, we will entertain those questions right now. If you have any questions about the items on the consent agenda, it has passed. But if you have some questions, we'd love to hear from you.
I'd like to explain items 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Mrs. Love, if you could go over 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Yes, sir. Item 7 is approval to sign standby engineering design service contracts with 4 firms for various transportation projects. This was a request for proposal done competitively through purchasing. This is something that we do on an annual basis to provide standby engineering services and design services for transportation projects that come about during the year. I don't know if you want specific information about the firms that we're going to contract with. Mr. Asenbrack, would you come to the podium, please, and address the specific questions related to the firms that we're contracting with?
Sure. I'm sorry, your question again?
I'd like to know who are you going to sign this contract with? Are any of them located in Roswell?
They are all located in the state of Georgia, and they're all local firms. We only have a handful of engineering firms in Roswell, and that is not one of our exclusion criteria. But they are the most qualified firms of the 39 that we had prepare requests for proposals or respond
Did we
to
have
our
any
requests.
firms from Roswell apply for this?
We had one, yes, sir, and they were shortlisted, but they were not finally selected.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Russell, if you'd come to the microphone and identify yourself, because we're this,
12 hours working at the bike ride yesterday. I'm a little tired.
and we appreciate that. It was a great event.
Yeah, it was 1,500 riders. My question is, okay, these are kind of nebulous terms. 4 firms for various transportation projects. How much are we going to spend on these projects, and what are they?
Ms. Stacenback, if you could explain.
Thank you, Steve.
The way this works is these firms are what we call shortlisted. Okay? So we have no specific tasks for them, and we do not.
These would be for the smaller projects.
These are for smaller
relatively.
projects. They have no expectation of making $1 with us. We have no guaranteed amount of money to give them. Okay, it is simply projects that come up through the course of our public discourse that are that the firms are not all the same. They actually bring different things to the table, and depending on what the project is, we will select the most qualified firm and enter into a contract with them. But we won't have to go through the whole selection process with them.
Now, who will determine, because I really want to be clear, who will determine once the project is decided upon, whatever you want to do, how much we're going to spend on it, and where's the money coming from?
That would be the council. These projects would have to be approved, but they're projects which haven't been identified. They're typically smaller projects. They're either an emergency project or some
Small
need
scale.
that comes up during the year. We need that the council wants to move forward. So they're relatively small projects. And when I say small, what number would you put on these projects would be
Mayor,
a small project?
What we looked at in the past, we're looking at projects, say $100,000 to $200,000 in total costs.
This is total construction.
And the design fee is usually about 10 to 15% of that. So we're looking at, a 10 to 15 to $30,000 design fee for a sidewalk gap filling project, something like that.
Will we be using MARTA money to do all these?
We could be. We have in the past.
We don't have any more MARTA money, do we?
We actually do, Mayor.
Good.
We're
$45,000.
well, that's almost gone, but we do have money that is
Ms.
actually
Russell,
going.
if you would come to the microphone when you speak.
Mayor, I'm really not happy with what you've done with the MARTA money.
I'm very vocal about this. You were allowed
We are not on the MARTA
$1,645,000.
money now. We're now on this contract. So this is not.
I'm talking
the time-
about these contracts. That's why I asked, is there any MARTA money left? Because you misdirected or redirected MARTA money to projects that were not related to MARTA. And that's why I'm asking these questions. I'm looking all around at all the little sidewalk and gappies and push-outs and bump-out projects that you use MARTA money on, and they're not related to MARTA, but you guys have pushed it through as MARTA agenda to use the money in other places. And that's why I'm sitting here asking these questions tonight.
All right. Do you have any more questions
Well, if
regarding
they come
the
up, I will
engineering
ask you,
projects?
Mayor.
Do you have any questions about 8, the acceptance of Henry Road multi-use trail right-of-way?
I'd like to know what it is first.
Ms.
There's no
Stacenback.
explanation on any of these.
If you have any questions, you may wish to stay at the microphone because I'd like you to come back to the microphone before you speak. Mrs. Russell, if you're going to speak, I want you at the microphone, not from the floor.
If I'm going to speak, I'll stand up when I'm ready to speak. I don't have to stand up and be standing here all the time. I'm allowed to sit down until I'm ready to speak, sir.
Here's the rule, Mrs. Russell.
There is no rule about sitting and standing.
Mrs. Russell, here's the rule. If you wish to speak, raise your hand. I will ask you to come to the microphone, and then you can begin speaking. We're not going to have speaking from the floor.
I understand that, but I don't have to stand here
Well,
You may have a seat,
this
and if
topic
you
is
raise
being
your hand,
addressed.
I'll recognize you.
That's
and you
fine.
come forward.
But I do know the rules too, Mayor, and that is incorrect when you say someone has to stand here.
Mr. Asenbrack, if you would answer the question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These three projects were formally taken through the committee process, so they've all been vetted
Let's talk about
by the committee.
Hembry Road multi-use trail right-of-way. What is that project specifically?
There is a project that we have that will connect Hembry Grove with along the south side of Hembry Road between Hembry Grove and Etris Road along Hembry. Not Etris.
So this is
Elkins,
the dedication
Elkins.
of the right-of-way for
This
that.
is the dedication of the right-of-way. It's the last step in the process that we need in order to let this project to construction.
Do we know how much we're paying for this right-of-way?
Mayor, it was all, I didn't bring those, I think they're in your packets.
Those are donated.
Donated. So
Those
these are
parcels-
donations.
Those were donated, that's
Are
correct.
donated
So that
parcels.
basically, we enter into a contract with the various parcel owners, and we fix a
Wait a minute,
value
these
to
are
them.
donated parcels. We're accepting donations.
And then we
for
are
this right-of-way.
formally accepting these as donations to the city for us to complete this project.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions about item 8, the donation of right-of-way being accepted by the city? All right, if you would cover item 9, what is that? It reads Holcomb Bridge Road multi-use trail right-of-way option agreements and make payments amount totaling $18,162. Where are those right-of-way?
Those are
located?
three different parcels along the alignment for the multi-use trail, which goes from Steeplechase Road on the western edge down to the Holcomb Bridge Middle School on the eastern side of 400. And these were three various parcels that we bundled all together because we have actually 9 parcels total in that. And this is a series along that way, along that path, when these parcels are agreed upon in a contractual form, then we bring them to the committee, we adopt them formally at the council, and then the ownership changes hands through your action here.
And the price for these 3 parcels will be $18,162.
That was the negotiated price with the parcel owners. Yes, sir.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions about the acceptance of the multi-use trail right-of-way option agreements for a total of $18,000? Seeing no hands up, we'll move on to number 10, which is the Norcross Street sidewalk right-of-way agreements. If you'll explain what that is.
Very similar to the others, taken to committee and here at council tonight. This particular project is right over here by Diesel Pizza, and it is the one that is on the northern side of Norcross Road between Canton Street and Highway 9. There's a sidewalk on the south side. There's currently no sidewalk on the north side. And so there's, again, were donations that we got with the parcel owners for their concurrence to build a sidewalk to make that connection.
So there's no money passing hands.
That's correct.
Does anyone have any questions about the Norcross Street sidewalk right-of-way acceptance? Yes, come forward, please. If you'll give us your name and address.
Janet Russell, 260 Willow Springs Drive, not Willow Springs subdivision where Miss Wynn lives. What will be the cost of the sidewalk the sidewalk on Norcross Street between Canton Street and Highway 9? Yes. Same, actually, I should have asked about the other one, the multi-use right-of-way trail. But what will be the cost in Norcross Street? We keep spending more and more money in the Canton Street area, and I'd like to know how much.
The answer is I can't tell you right now because the procurement is out on the street. We have a pre-bid conference this week. I believe it's Thursday.
Do you have an estimate of what it might cost?
We have
Ballpark.
$15,000.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Does
sir.
anyone else have any questions about the Norcross Street sidewalk? If you'll come forward, please, and give us your name and address.
Janet Russell, same address. Mr. Asenbrecht, $15,000 for that sidewalk. Are we doing brick? Are we doing pressed concrete that looks like brick? Are we doing concrete? Because $15,000 sure doesn't buy much sidewalk.
It's just
Then why are we bothering?
because we need to make a connection.
Are we going to use MARTA money?
We are.
And what is the justification of that?
It's within 3/4 of a mile of a MARTA route.
Okay. Are you going to put a MARTA bus stop and shelter there? There's a stop now, a pole right at the corner of Norcross and 9 on both sides. Are you going to be putting in a bus shelter?
No.
Well, you got $1,645,000 worth of MARTA money, and I'd like to see you put in a few more bus shelters.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions about the consent agenda? Seeing no hands up, we'll move to the next agenda item. Ms. Love, are you going to be calling the community development agenda for Nancy Diamond?
Sir. First item is a final plat, 350 and 370 Rucker Road, Crabapple Manor, land lot 1240. Mr. Townsend.
This is a final plat on Rucker Road. The council will remember the rezoning that was completed last year dealing with this project. This is the area. The community development has reviewed the final plat. This is for 27 lots. All of the documentation is in order, and staff would recommend acceptance of the final plat and allow for the mayor to sign it. If you have any questions.
Does the council have any questions regarding the final plat? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Townsend, there are several zoning conditions I just wanted to verify were completed. We had a condition that the developer will provide $50,000 for future improvements on Rucker Road. Has that been obtained?
That will be obtained prior to the issuance of the first building permit. That's how the condition was drafted.
Okay.
And done by council.
All right. There's also a condition that the landscaping will be maintained by the landscaping for the common area out front will be maintained by the HOA.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make sure that that occurs after the plat gets approved?
They have bonded for the placement to put the landscaping in. They're going to do that by the end of the year. So we've got a bond to complete that, and that will be turned over to the HOA prior to the closeout of the subdivision.
Okay, so that's already in place?
The bond is in place, yes.
Okay. We also had a condition for a 10-foot wide arbor or other finished opening in the fence.
It's there and it exists today.
It's in place?
Yes.
Okay.
I drove by it this weekend.
I'm sorry?
I drove by it this weekend to make sure it was there.
Okay. Then lastly, the plat is supposed to show a no access easement, and the plat itself says a no access buffer, and there's a difference between a buffer and an easement. There may be a legal question, but should that say easement? Mr. Davidson?
No, that's fine.
That accomplishes what we need?
It does.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Becky Wynn. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. I understand that Councilmember Wynn is has volunteered to present this agenda on behalf of Nancy Diamond with her consent. So we'll turn back to Councilmember Wynn to read this.
Okay, thank you.
Present the rest of the agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second item is RC 12-05 with on Idris Road, EAH Investments Land Lot 1236. And my understanding is that they have asked for a deferral.
Yes,
Mr.
this
Townsend.
application has been requested to be deferred to the August meeting. They will be going to the Planning Commission next week, and then we'll be coming back to the Mayor and Council at August.
Is there anyone here tonight who came here to hear or comment on this application, this Idris Road EHS Investments application? All right. If you were, or if you are, you will have another opportunity to speak if the council defers this. So is there a motion for deferral?
Yes, sir. Motion to defer to the July 17th, I'm sorry, which be our
August 13th.
August 13th community development agenda.
Is there a second? Motion to defer by Councilmember Wynn, second by Councilmember DiPolito. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Approval of an amendment to Chapter 7 Land Development and Environmental Protection of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This will be the second reading. Ms. Wakefield.
Okay. Thank you. This is a request to amend the erosion and sedimentation ordinance as requested by the Environmental Protection Division. The amendments are minor amendments. The first two amendments relate to changing out the word land disturbance to development permit, correcting a misspelled word, also clarifying that the city engineer or her inspector will do the inspection and the enforcement. And finally, to establish the Soil Erosion Fund Committee. Right now, that committee does not reflect the current makeup of the Mayor and Council Committee of a whole, so this will just clarify the participants in that committee. And this is the second reading, so we ask that it be approved.
Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 7, Land Development and Environmental Protection, Article 7.3, Erosion and Sedimentation of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. Now, therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the Mayor and Council, pursuant to their authority, adopt the following ordinance. The Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Chapter 7, Land Development and Environmental Protection, Article 7.3, Soil Erosion, Sedimentation Control, and Pollution Control is amended by deleting therefrom the first paragraph of Section 7.3.4 C17, minimum requirements for erosion, sedimentation, and pollution control using best management practices, and substituting therefore a new paragraph to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. In Article 7.3, Section 7.3.4 C17, minimum requirements for erosion, sedimentation, and pollution control using best management practices, is further amended by deleting therefrom the first paragraph from the Section 7.3.4 C17D1, and substituting therefore a new paragraph to read as follows, text again of which is incorporated herein by reference. Article 7.3, Soil Erosion, Sedimentation Control, and Pollution Control is further amended at Section 7.3.6, Inspection and Enforcement, by deleting subsection A and substituting therefore a new subsection A to read as follows, text of which is again is incorporated herein by reference. Article 7.3, Soil Erosion, Sedimentation Control, and Pollution Control, Section 7.3.10, Establishment of Soil Erosion Fund and Committee is amended by deleting therefrom subsection D and substituting therefore a new subsection D to read as follows, text which is incorporated herein by reference. And Article 7.3, Soil Erosion, Sedimentation Control, and Pollution Control, Section 7.3.11, Effectivity, Validity, and Liability, subsection 7.3.11a is amended by deleting such subsection and substituting therefore a new subsection 7.3.11a to read as follows. Text again of which is incorporated herein, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve second reading.
Motion by Councilmember Wynn. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Okay, approval of an amendment to Chapter 5, Building and Construction of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This was also the second reading. Ms. Wakefield.
Yes, this is an amendment to the Code of Ordinance addressing the chief building official. This amendment allows that staff person to reflect the current practices. It also allows the city to outsource that service to a qualified entity. With that, we ask that this be approved.
Read the ordinance. Second reading.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 5, Building and Construction of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the Mayor and Council, pursuant to their authority, adopt the following ordinance. The Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Chapter 5, Building and Construction, Article 5.1, Section 5.1.2, Chief Building Inspector, shall be amended by deleting said section in its entirety and replacing said section with a new Section 5.1.2 to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. In Chapter 5, Building and Construction, Article 5.1 is further amended by deleting therefrom Section 5.1.3, Appointment, substituting therefore a new Section 5.1.3 to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Motion to approve the second reading.
I understand that this is occurring because of our outsourcing of the activities of this, and I'm just curious as to if the person that holds this role, new defined role, is the same as before, or if we're going to hire somebody new for this.
As part of the outsourcing, the person that will be the project manager that will function as the chief building official is a certified master chief code official and a certified code enforcement officer. So the person from Safe Build would bring that expertise to the city.
Just a question, is this going to be... Question, will we be identifying an individual or a position for this? Are we just with the folks we're outsourcing it to, if they move from one person to another within that position, what happens?
That would have to be approved by the city administrator and myself.
So we're approving a position, and y'all will, the staff will be
Yes,
approving
sir.
the individual. Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Ms. Wakefield, for appointment of the building inspector, it is a 4-year initial term.
That's the old regulations, the regulations that we're asking to be changed.
All right, so the new regulation does not specify a term?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Councilmember Price, are you voting?
Well, I have no question.
Well, let's hear it.
In the prior, or the current, up until now, code, this was a responsibility of mayor and council to appoint this person. I don't recall having done that during the time I've been here, but I haven't been here 4 years. So is this is a change then in the responsibility of who will ultimately make this decision?
Yes, ma'am, it is. As I said, mentioned, it currently reflects, as I understand it, the current practices is that the position is a position within the Community Development Department, and that position goes through the normal HR process and is interviewed and hired in that fashion. I can't tell you when this provision was put in for the 4 years appointments and the 4 years reappointment. Like yourself, I have not been here 4 years, but I know that it definitely has not happened since I was here. But if you're asking if it's a change, yes, that position would no longer be
Just
appointed.
for clarification, what discretion, what role is this chief building inspector? What decisions does he make?
His decisions are related to the various building codes that the city applies and
he
enforces.
interprets the building
He
code.
interprets the building codes. He
Does his
issues
authority
the
go
permit.
beyond the building code?
Yes, sir.
And beyond the building code, what decisions does he make?
Well, he really has no decisions beyond the building code. If you're thinking about the Safe Build makeup, he will also supervise the code enforcement staff because he's the.
But as far as the role that he's playing as this chief building inspector for the city of
it's
Roswell,
just the building codes.
he doesn't interpret zoning.
No, sir.
He doesn't grant variances.
No, sir.
It's just pure building code interpretation. A question comes up about the building code. He has now. If the city disagreed with him, what would be the recourse? We said, wait a minute, this guy's off the reservation. What would we do?
I probably have to defer to David. I think I'm not sure if it's in the ordinance that it comes back to mayor and council if there is a discrepancy. Actually, let me correct that. There's a building code. And I don't know I don't have the correct name right now, but there is a building code committee that if there's an interpretation issue, and the members of that committee
You could
were
appeal
approved,
from
you can
the
appeal to
decision.
that committee. Yes, sir.
And could the city appeal from the decision of our chief building inspector?
The way it's worded, anybody who's aggrieved by the decision can appeal.
So if the
That
city
could be
felt
us.
he had made a bad decision, we could appeal the decision to this Board of Construction Adjustment, whatever they call it. Thank you. That helps me understand the role a little better. Other questions the council may have? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? We're going to take another vote, having had this lengthy discussion. Does any further discussion before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. It's unanimous.
Okay, right along. Approval of an amendment to Chapter 3 Alcohol Beverages of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. Second reading. Ms. Wakefield.
Yes, this is an amendment to the Code of Ordinance dealing with the catering permits in conjunction with a special event. This amendment represents basically a clarification as to when a special, not a special event, but when a catering permit is required as it relates to a special event. If you do not have a alcohol beverage license and you're not a nonprofit, then you would have to engage the services of an approved caterer. If you have an existing alcohol beverage license and you want to sell alcohol related to a special event, then you do not need the catering permit. If you're doing it on your site, if you are an existing alcohol beverage license holder and you want to have a special event in conjunction with something that's off premise, then you just need to get the, you don't need the catering permit. You need to obtain, it's not required to obtain the catering permit. And there is a special permit if you are a nonprofit and you want to have a special event and serve or sell alcohol. This is the second reading, so we ask that this matter be approved.
Mr. Davidson, if you'd read the ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Roswell, Georgia, to amend Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages regarding special event permits. Now therefore be it ordained and is hereby ordained that Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell is amended as follows. Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3.2, Section 3.2.5, Alcoholic Beverage Caterers is amended by deleting Section 3.2.5A1 and replacing said section with a new Section 3.2.5A1 to read as follows. Text of which is incorporated herein by reference. In Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages is further amended by deleting therefrom Article 3.7, Section 3.7.9, Special Event Pouring Permit, temporary permits for nonprofit civic organizations, and replacing said section with a new Section 3.7.9 to read as follows. Text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve second reading.
Motion by Councilmember Wynn to approve the second reading. Is there a second? Who wants to drink a beer? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I have a question on subsection D under section 3.7.9.
You have to speak.
I'm sorry. I have a question on 3.7.D, 3.7.9, subsection D, where a nonprofit is permitted to get a temporary permit for 3 days. So there's not a licensee involved in that instance?
No, sir. And I think Mr. Davidson can answer that. I think this relates to the state code, and that's what this provision comes from.
This follows the state code exactly how they have it, except for we charge $50 and the state charges $25.
So if there is some sort of an issue with the event, who's responsible?
Well, they'll have to get a permit. They have to pay $50 to get a permit. So they will be responsible for it.
They being the
nonprofit
organization. But there's not an individual who is responsible?
Yes. Every permit or license is issued to an individual and a business or a nonprofit organization.
So this permit will be issued to an individual?
Absolutely. Somebody's name will be on it.
Okay. So, and the state allows temporary permitting for the sale of alcoholic beverages?
Yes, sir.
I find that interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions? We're looking for a second. Is that a second? Yes. Councilman Eigelhart seconded. Is there anyone in the audience with any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That passes unanimously. This time I'll call upon...
We got one more, sir.
I believe that's going to be deferred, but you'll give it a call.
Do we still need to read it since it's been on the agenda?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Approval of an amendment to Chapter 14, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs in Chapter 15 reserved of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. This is the first reading that I think we're asking for a deferral. Staff is asking for deferral.
Yes, we're asking that this matter be deferred until the July 23rd meeting.
Is there anyone here tonight who came to comment on this amendment?
What's the amendment?
I believe we have a hand up, but let's have an explanation of what this is, and then we'll see if there are any questions.
It's an amendment to the Code of Law, basically to move the provisions of special events from Chapter 14 to Chapter 15. It makes special event permitting more efficient. It spells it out. It gives a lot more detail as to the criteria for issuing a permit, the criteria for the denial of a permit, and the application process.
And again, we're asking for a deferral, but does anyone here tonight have any questions or comments about this? You will have another opportunity to speak at the first reading once it's deferred, and the second reading. Anyone have any questions or comments about this? Do we have a motion to defer?
Yes, sir. Motion to defer till, I think, July 23rd?
Yes.
Councilmember Wynn moves to defer. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. All in favor of the motion to defer, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll call upon Transportation Liaison, Councilmember Betty Price.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have one item this evening regarding the potential programs, projects for the TIA initiative. That's the referendum that will occur on July 31st. And this discussion is only if that should pass. So this is not a discussion of whether or not it should pass, but a discussion of what will happen if it indeed does pass on the 31st, so that we are prepared if it does.
The intention of this vote is to let the citizens know, if they approve the referendum, how the city might spend the money. So, if you'll proceed.
Mr. Asenbrack will give us more information.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. You are correct. We are 22 days away from the vote. And so in order to perhaps review the situation that we're in right now and then talk about the discretionary portion, I just wanted to review in the broadest general terms where we are. The vote is for the region, for the metropolitan region, and if it passes, the City of Roswell will get 3 distinct projects. And I brought the things with you, and just to go over them real quick, we will get a project to improve the intersection at Holcomb Bridge at 400.
You want to, as you identify these projects, you want to talk about the budget for the project too.
Yes, sir. The budget for this project is $48 million. The next project is what we call the Gateway Project, which is the removal of the reversible lanes. And the project, the line item dollar amount assigned to this project is $20,400,000. And the final project is an improvement on State Route 140, we call House Road here, and the line item for this project is $18,600,000.
Now, this is not adding another lane.
These 3 projects constitute.
Let's talk about this last project.
Yeah,
just for clarification.
All right.
This is intersection improvements, but it's not adding another lane for the car.
That's correct. We call this operational improvements, Mayor. Basically, what would it be was taking a 2-lane road and making it a 3-lane road so that the left turn movements don't clog up the through traffic, and then it also adds bike lanes and multimodal sidewalk pedestrian improvements along the corridor.
That's $18 million from what point to what point?
That would go from Mansell Road in the south up to Rucker Road in the north. And that is a joint venture with the City of Milton and the City of Alpharetta, because they're going to do improvements as well to Rucker Road going east and west, and Arnold Mill, which also goes north and south.
Do we have questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Asenbrack. You mentioned this being 3 lanes, but it's really only 3 lanes where there are intersections.
Correct. Right. 3 lanes as needed.
There'll be a landscape median
in various parts. It hasn't been designed. It's simply a concept right now, but it does not add any capacity to the road.
It's not a center turn lane.
It is not a universal center turn lane. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
It will actually be context sensitive. We will look to do the absolute minimum that we can to get the design elements in with the architectural details.
Well, I know the community expressed concern about having a center turn lane or 4 lanes, so I wanted to clarify that
Yes,
this
sir.
is just turns at intersections.
As needed. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So these 3 projects that I just reviewed are line items in the law which cannot be changed. So they're in there. It's up or down. They either all pass and they get funded, or they don't pass and they don't get funded. The other part of this bill, we refer to TIA, Transportation Investment Act, and I use that as acronyms, is that there is 15%. So that's 85% of the money. 15% of the money is allocated to municipalities by a formula. And for us, that would be approximately $1,900,000 per year for 10 years. And so that presents the city, all of the municipality, with an opportunity of how we'd like to spend this with this money. This money is loosely required to be spent on transportation improvements. So we can't do other things with it that are not transportation related. So tonight, I'd like to, Council Member Price and Council Member Diamond and some staff members got together and we kicked around some options. And what we'd like to offer for your consideration, first of all, let you know that tonight we do not need to make a decision, but it was simply to start a public dialogue about what we might want to do with this money. So one of the things that we talked about was 2 broad categories. One might be considered, say, a legacy project, and the other might be a series of pots that we fund. So with a legacy project, one of the things we talked about was, for instance, we might decide to make Holcomb Bridge 92 from east to west, from Cobb County to Gwinnett County, to have uniform sidewalks and or multi-use trails. So you could literally walk from one end of the city to the other. Another option might be to go back to our policy that we have right now about sidewalks, which are to connect a half a mile between parks and schools. And this graphic is supposed to show you the city of Roswell and graphically where the parks and schools are and how much of the land mass of the city of Roswell this covers, which is quite a bit. So we're still quite a ways away from funding this, but this may be something for your consideration. Bless you. Dr. Price had also requested going back to this other, if you'll recall, this project was really considering multimodal improvements along Holcomb Bridge and 92, and then we would also consider projects crossing it. For instance, this is a rendering of potentially a multi-use path that would cross over Holcomb Bridge between, say, Centennial and East Roswell Park, so that the 2 schools and the park and the future library would all be connected where the children and the students wouldn't have to get in harm's way. So that is one option for your consideration, one broad option. The other was, if you'll recall in the past, when we've done programs, we've set them up in, say, different pots. And this is just a loose representation of perhaps a concept where we would fund, say, put some money into a sidewalk pot. And this could go into gap closures and some connectivity, some complete streets options. The staff would look at those things, bring them back to the committee for your consideration, and then we'd fund them. Another might be congestion relief. We hear a lot about congestion relief with some turn lanes and maybe looking at some roundabouts or some intersection improvements. That would be something that would be funded out of that. And finally, maybe some redevelopment support. We've talked about Grove Way. There's some street and multimodal accesses that might help kick that off, or perhaps an anchor project. One of the anchor projects that we've considered, and this is just a rendering that staff has done, was maybe doing something around the square right outside our area here. As you know, we had DPZ has done some concepts to make a Canton Street South. Well, we've taken that, we've looked at, adding a little bit of vitality to that with some pedestrian improvements, some parking, some shops along the sidewalk here. But the idea is that perhaps this money, if it's going to be $2 million a year for 10 years, might start this. We might start the design, we might do the infrastructure improvements in the right-of-way. So looking here for some guidance from the pleasure of the mayor and the city council as to how you'd like staff to proceed with promoting a program for the use of this TIF 15%?
I will give you my thoughts, and then I will turn to council for their thoughts. I think it's appropriate for the citizens to have some sense of how the city would spend this $1.9 million a year if they approve this, because they've got to make the final decision and they need to see the direction we're going in. On the other hand, I don't want to commit a full 10 years out.
Yes, sir.
Because I'd like to leave future councils flexibility and as needs arise. So I'd like to develop a short-term plan.
Okay.
But in the road business, a short-term plan is really a 4 to 5 year plan, because that's how long it takes to design, permit, and build any transportation projects of subsequent. So I think we can reasonably look at the projects which we've already discussed, which we've gotten public input on, and give them a sense of those projects. And the projects which are the top of my list one is completing sidewalks on Holcomb Bridge Road, at least on one side, all the way to the Gwinnett County line. I know you can walk on sidewalks from Highway 9 all the way to Cobb County.
Yes, sir.
And although I couldn't currently support on both sides of Holcomb Bridge Road, in particular one side of Holcomb Bridge Road happens to be in Johns Creek, and I'm not going to be supporting building sidewalks in Johns Creek.
Right.
And as you get further east, you get less and less along there. I know on the north side, that's pretty much vacant property, but I'd like to see sidewalks at least on one side of Holcomb Bridge Road all the way from 400 to Gwinnett County. And have you all got an idea of what that might cost?
Yes, sir. Anticipating you would ask that. As it turns out, that's not the graphic I want to show you.
And this is the same project which we're trying to acquire right away right now. For,
yes, sir. That is exactly right. We're actually moving forward just tonight. Well, the project that goes east and west, it's about $8.5 million to finish the entire east-west connector. What did I just do with that?
This is to make sure we get sidewalks at least on one side of Holcomb Bridge Road.
Yes, sir.
All the way to the Gwinnett County line.
That's correct.
Complete project would be about $8.5 million, and
right.
And a lot of that would be a multi-purpose trail which would handle bicycles.
That's correct.
So I think that's a good project, and the other project which is at the top of my list, because I believe it would support redevelopment and mitigate traffic, is the early off-ramp off of 400, which I think y'all looked at.
Yes, sir.
And you got a schematic on that?
I did not bring that, but I can tell you that it's basically an early off-ramp for the northbound 400 commuters to go and exit into Old Alabama south of Holcomb Bridge Road for those commuters that want to go south, and for some redevelopment opportunities of the parcels there that are underutilized right now.
Do we have a ballpark of what that might cost? I think the council is telling me their note showed $2.5 to $3 million.
$2.5 to $3 million, I think, is what's at 12.
Anyway, those are the two projects which
yes, sir.
are at the top of my list, and I would encourage council to give input. I think it's only fair to our citizens to let them know, if they do approve this, how we might spend
yes,
some of this money and make an early commitment. And those are the two I'd like to commit to. Council, your thoughts? If you'd like to speak, Councilmember Price.
If the TIF passes, would not the early off-ramp possibly be part of the Holcomb Bridge 400 improvements?
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am.
So would we be redundant if we took our local portion and used it for that?
We certainly are of the opinion that we want to make all this money go absolutely as far as we can. So, yes, Mayor, with all due respect, we probably already have that in our list with the $48 million.
If we already have that in the
yes, sir.
$44 million, then I would say.
So maybe we could.
Spend it, my project then would be the Holcomb Bridge sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
Other comments and thoughts? The council have their priorities. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
I was making sure Councilmember Price was done. I missed the committee meeting where you talked about this, although I read the minutes, which were quite entertaining. Maybe I'm glad I missed it. But I want to clarify what we're doing, because we're not saying these are going to be the projects that we're going to spend that money on, but this is the likely pot of things that we're going to do. Because Steve just described one thing, and now you're talking another. I just want to clarify.
I would like this council, if they are comfortable, to say, if we receive this money, these are the projects that we would support early on, because it would help people in making a decision to know how the money is being spent. Now, we don't have to, but I would encourage this council to commit to some projects, but not try to program out the whole $19 million, but to program some projects which we'd put it as a high priority.
I guess I understand the point and don't totally disagree. I mean, we want to say here's what we're spending the money for, but I know many cities throughout the metro area haven't even gotten this far to consider. My concern would be that, as we know, as you've said, with transportation, so many things change so much that we get into saying, well, this is what we're going to do, and then something else happens and there's a better way to do that. So I'm okay with what the original description was. Here are these pots that we think we can spend it on, but I'm not sure I would support going with individual projects at this point.
Okay.
And one of the issues that I would have, and I agree, eventually we want to do this multi-use trail along Holcomb Bridge, but looking at the number of people who would actually be impacted from where we've already gotten through to Horseshoe Bend to Gwinnett is not that much relative to if we did all the schools and parks all throughout the city that everybody keeps saying we need to do. That has a major impact for a lot of people. So, if we had this money to do those kind of things, then I, again, support the project along Holcomb Bridge, but I'm not sure that has the biggest bang for the buck. So I like what you've got up here now of those kind of pots there to look for.
Okay.
Other thoughts? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Yeah, I support the idea of having these different buckets. I like the way you set them up with sidewalks, congestion relief, and redevelopment support. I think those are three good goals to shoot for. In fact, I would favor heavily toward the sidewalk program, maybe as much as 50% of that money going toward sidewalks each year. And I tend to agree with Councilman Eichelhardt. I like the idea of connecting our parks. And we've discussed in the committee before the possibility of what would it take to get the entire Roswell Loop built, which I think would be fabulous, to have a greenway that connects all of our parks and all of our schools could be really transformational for the city. So I would love to see us head toward that goal and have a multi-use trail or a greenway that could be built using these funds.
I would remind Councilman DiPolito that there is a park at the Gwinnett County line, which is the Girard Landing Park, so this would connect it. And to me, that the idea of completing that connection from one side of the Roswell to the other is, I agree with you, but I'm just telling you, it's my first priority.
I understand your point about the park being there, and I think it comes down to usage. So let's connect the major usage areas first and then extend out. And I'd love the idea of connecting to Girard Landing. I think that's a fabulous idea.
Well, one of the reasons that the bicyclists can never get to Girard Landing is you cannot get there from here. I think if you had a bicycle trail all the way to Girard Landing, you would find a lot more folks bicycling than you have now, because Holcomb Bridge Road, there are a lot of roads that you can bicycle on, and they're near schools, but you cannot bicycle on Holcomb Bridge Road safely.
You can't drive on Holcomb Bridge Road safely. I just made a comment. You can't drive on Holcomb Bridge safely either.
Yes, more thoughts.
I think this is great that we're looking at this, even though we don't know if it's going to pass yet or not. At least it looks like we're being proactive, so I do appreciate you doing this. And plus, I think this helps us, even if we don't get the TIA does not pass, at least we have some direction that we want to go.
Sure.
So I really like that. I like to keep this more fluid. I don't mind saying, this, what you have listed here, either the bucket or this is how we want to go. But what I'm hearing from my colleagues is could still be a lot of discussion about whose priorities and what we think. And with transportation, you never know when something's going to happen that can shoot something up on the list.
Sure.
I like the early off ramp, but if TIA passes, then we don't have to worry about that part of it. I like that. I also like, if we could do it, is the bridge that would connect Eves Road, not Eves, Bounce, isn't it? Eves.
Yes.
Eves. Bounce. I live over there, I should know.
It's Eves.
Eves Road.
That's
I'm
the
sorry.
topography.
Yeah, the schools and the library and the park. So that's something that I think I would like to see done, because we've been talking about that since I've been on council. But I'm just glad that we're looking proactive, that we're looking very positive about if this does pass, how we're going to spend our money. So I think it's very exciting that we're looking at that. But I like to keep it a little bit more fluid, because I think what you said, Mr. Mayor, is that we don't want to lock in future council members, but to get something out there proactive, but still understand that if something else pops up, that we can still adjust the projects. Thank you.
Well, the reason I'd like the council to look at some specific projects is it's good to be fluid, but it's also when you're asking the citizens to vote on a 1% sales tax, it's good to have something that's concrete, or at least the first phase of this, the first few years, and I'm encouraging to look at projects we've looked at in the past, so that
Sidewalks are concrete.
It's concrete, but and if your position is we want to put sidewalks within half miles of all the schools, and you give them here's the list and here's what it'll cost, then they know where it's going. I know it's much easier for me to vote on spending money when I know where the money's going, than it is to say these different pots, because that doesn't tell me it's going to be in my neighborhood. It doesn't tell me what it's going to be specifically, and so my approach to flexibility is saying flexibility in the later years, but in the initial round of these things, we've talked about a lot of these projects, and we've actually got a lot of these projects in design. Yes, and some of these projects we're even acquiring right-of-way for, but we don't have money for yet.
That's correct. So that when the money does come available, we're immediately out to bid for construction.
So I would encourage the council to look at those projects which we're ready to go on now, but we just need money for, and we have fully discussed them. And again, we can talk about being fluid, but people are going to be voting. People are voting today,
yes, sir,
by absentee ballot. And if you're going to let them know how the money is being spent, we don't have a lot of time. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think when I was trying to use the word fluid, I was trying to say in later years, because I think you're right. We might want to look at some short-term projects, a couple. I have no problems with that. We just have to decide which ones we want to do. I have no problems with that. And soon. I understand that. But soon in government years is like snail's pace.
Soon means before people vote. The window is getting smaller.
But I was going to say, I do like the idea of the sidewalk connectivity, but I still like that over the bridge, over the bridge over.
Perhaps as an option would be that this one section of Holcomb Bridge multi-use trail that we just did the right-of-way. We're not quite there yet, but that project, if that was a priority, kind of meets three of these. It's a sidewalk, it's mobility along Holcomb Bridge, and it connects schools and parks. It really kind of hits all of them, and that's easy out the gate. That's only about $1 million. That's only about half of our first year's allocation. So that might be a no-brainer for us at least to.
Don't use that word.
All right, that might be an easy. Well, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit because that's not well received either. Okay, so. That might be one for your consideration.
Councilmember Eichelhard.
Shovel ready. No, we don't like that either. Okay.
Thank you. Clearly, we don't have a consensus here, and at least two of us, I think, missed the last meeting, and we got two of us missing here tonight. I'm uncomfortable with making a major decision that we don't really have consensus on. But I really don't think, honestly, people are going to make a decision on this overall TIA 1% sales tax on whether we're going to spend $4, $5, $6 million in the next 2-3 years on what that specific project is.
Fair enough.
Most of them aren't even going to know, that based on what you just said, and I agree that the short time window. But the bigger picture is what they're making a decision on, and we know that there are 3 major projects that are going to come here, as well as money that could do these, whatever we're calling them, pots or buckets or whatever.
Yes, sir.
But I'm just uncomfortable
Okay.
what I just said, that we make a decision here with us tonight.
Well, if we're going to make a decision, we need to, when is our next meeting? 23rd. We can choose not to make a decision, but if we're going to make a decision, we need to make it by the 23rd. And if the council chooses saying it's not enough time, I understand. But if we're going to make a decision before the vote, you've got until the next meeting. Councilmember Price.
May I make a motion?
You may make a motion. We'll hear from the floor once we have a motion.
I move that we, in anticipation of the potential passage of the T-SPLOST referendum, that the 15% local share going to Roswell would be allocated in a fashion related to our unfunded construction projects, dividing up the monies into 3 categories of a sidewalk program, a congestion relief program, and a redevelopment support program, with the emphasis on the sidewalk program to include an overpass on the east side.
Just some questions. Would that be for the entire 10-year term or a portion of the 10-year term?
Well, that gives us some direction for the early portion, and I think it's broad enough that it covers the things that most people are concerned about, and certainly bucket number 3, if we have some imminent redevelopment activities that need our support quickly, that would give us some flexibility to do that as well.
It makes me feel good for you to say that, but I'm not sure it means anything. But if the council wishes to adopt it as is, that's fine with me. We have a motion. Do we have any questions?
A question from Mr. Davidson. Because this is money over 10 years, 1 year at a time, and aren't we prohibited from binding future councils for future monies?
Yeah, they wouldn't be bound by anything you do tonight.
Okay. So that might be part of the answer right there.
It's mostly categorical and prioritizing the things that we know we're ready to do and would like to start to move ahead on. And certainly the sidewalk programs, that overpass would take about the first year's receipts on that. But I don't want to tie us to that if something in buckets 2 or 3 come up that we might find a higher priority given some unusual situation. But I would say at this point that we would put at least the bulk of that as a priority in bucket number 1.
We have a motion. The council can either ask questions or second it. Councilmember DiPolito.
I have a question. Is the overpass in your motion, or is it taken out of your motion?
It was in it as an example of a priority in bucket number 1. A high priority in bucket number 1, which actually could be funded by the first year alone.
And the reason I'm asking is I think it's an interesting idea. I'm not convinced that it will be something that can be designed in a way that people will actually use. I'm open to exploring that, and I think the idea of exploring that as a possibility is a very good idea. But I'm not willing to say let's fund it until we get a better sense of what it is.
I don't think Councilmember Price is anywhere near that specific.
No. It was an example of a priority in bucket number 1.
Okay.
A possible project.
A possible high priority.
Councilmember Wynn.
I second Councilmember Price's motion.
We have a motion and a second. At this time, we'll entertain comments from the floor. Council, yes, come forward, please, if you'll give us your name and address.
Janet Russell, 260 Willow Springs Drive. Mr. Eisenbrecht, I like your map. Thank you. I wouldn't have made that one of all the parks. Could you put it up there for a minute for me? I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think it should be included in one of your buckets. In addition to sidewalks and connectivity, which, of course, I have no interest in, something that I brought up, I think, to Mr. DiPolito before, and I think it can be included in this project, is a circulating bus shuttle run by the city of Roswell, much like the Buck shuttle in Buckhead and the shuttle in Athens, Georgia. There are no charge to people to hop on and hop off. For a while, I wanted to call it the ho-ho bus, but I didn't think that was good, standing for hop on, hop off. And then the go-go bus, get on, get off. But the other night I was thinking that based on this map and how much land we own, I think we could call it the park it. Meaning park your car and get on the shuttle bus, and it actually would connect all of the parks. And if you made a route and you look at how the parks go, it takes us past major shopping centers, parks, churches, schools. And it would enable people who don't want to walk. Of course, you have to have a death wish on Holcomb Bridge to do anything, and 9. As the population ages, people would be able to get to these shopping centers, churches, schools, and parks on a shuttle bus. I think the idea of park it's a great name because it goes from park to park, and as you're telling me to park your car. Imagine if teenagers could go places in this town without getting in their car. Parents would sleep better at night. Elderly could get around. People who can't drive for a lot of reasons. So I'd like to see that included in this. Some sort of alternative transportation. That was my other acronym a couple years ago, having been in Seattle, where they instituted the South Lake Union Trolley. And you can figure out what the acronym for that was, the South Lake Union Trolley. And everybody loves it. And I thought about Ride the Rat, which was Roswell Alternative Transportation, but I didn't think a rat on the side of the bus would be very attractive. So I do like the idea of a shuttle bus that just constantly circulates from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. It would increase economic development. It would encourage people to get off of MARTA, because I gave a ride to a lady who got off at the MARTA stop. She got off with me, and I gave her a ride to Holcomb Bridge to the Home Depot over there by Woodstock, because she had a job working from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. She had no idea that she would have to walk from Holcomb Bridge and 9 to Home Depot 5 miles away to get to her job. She had no idea, and she was going to work all night, and she had been on the bus since 6 p.m., and it was 8 o'clock at night coming from Stone Mountain for a job. So imagine if she could have known that there was a Buck shuttle, so to speak. And the Buck shuttle, just in case none of you have ever used it, is actually paid for through the Transportation Act. There is a $70,000 grant, and the Buckhead Merchants and Hotels help pay for it. So when you think economic development, you know that $500,000 you allocated to the Roswell Business Alliance to bring business to Roswell. You've got people who would like to stay and shop in Roswell, but they have no way to get to these places because you shifted the access from commercial from north-south where the bus runs to east-west where there's nothing. You can't get there. The workers can't get there, and the people that live here can't get there unless you have a car. So please consider that in this. It's all about roads and sidewalks, but there's also alternative ways to get there, and I think a local bus shuttle, which you may chuckle at, would have a lot of appeal. I have mentioned it to people, and it's not a big giant MARTA bus. It's like one of those smaller hotel buses that takes you from the airport to the shuttle bus to the hotel. It's a great option, and I'd like to see you include that in this motion. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
My name is Alex Leach. I live on 1200 Martin Ridge Road. I just had a quick question, just for my own personal, just a personal question. Was the sidewalk you were talking about on Holcomb Bridge just after 400? Is that the side that's near Centennial High School in that area, or are you talking about more on the west side?
Mr. Eisenbrecht.
This bridge here?
Yeah, you had talked about just Mr. Wood.
You're talking about the pedestrian bridge or the sidewalk multipurpose?
This is Holcomb Bridge. We envision that the Centennial High School will be on the north side, and this will connect the park on the south side. So basically, right here.
All right. And I have a second question.
Sure.
I go to Centennial High School. I'll be my senior year finally.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've tried to walk to school. It's not easy, especially in Holcomb Bridge. And there's another intersection. I can't really point it out on the map. I'm not very good with maps. But it's a left-hand turn into Walton Centennial Apartments. There's no light there, and it's right around a bend, and that's a very dangerous area just to turn on a car. I know our cross-country team and our track team both run along that side of the road. And I would maybe like to suggest, I don't know if the project's been approved or not or any sort of thing like that, but if a crosswalk or some sort of thing like that could be put in there just to ensure the safety of students. And there's elementary school over there, and I've seen children walk across there too. I just think it's a very dangerous intersection if something may be considered for that.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak? We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. And I would suggest that if the council wishes to make further modifications to this motion at the second meeting or clarifications, you have that opportunity. But we do have a motion and a second to create buckets and let people have an idea of what we're thinking about. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Councilmember DiPolito.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to address Ms. Russell's comment. I think that's an intriguing idea to have a bus circulating. Is that something that could be funded by this? Because a lot of that is operational. I would imagine we could probably buy the bus. But is that an operational?
I believe it could be.
It could be?
I think so. I'll research that.
Okay. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. All I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel and acquisition of real estate.
Do we have a motion for closure? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Aguilar. All in favor, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Ms. Love, we have a work session. What is the subject of our work session immediately following this meeting in room 220?
So we have discussion of proposed stormwater policies for redevelopment.
Wonderful. Let's move to room 220.